Good morning, everyone on the West Coast, and good afternoon for folks here on the East Coast and everywhere in between. Thank you for joining us today for today's Knowledge Builder webinar series. Our webinar today is 5 Keys to Association Website Success and in 2019 and beyond. And we have joining us today Ray Van Hilst. Ray, I hope you're doing well. You're probably on mute right now. Again, thank you for joining us today. I'd like to also give a special shout out to many of our customers who are on the webinar today. We have a really great turnout. So just a little bit about Ray Van Hilst. I've known Ray professionally for many, many years now. And if you are no stranger to associations in the industry, you will see Ray around quite a bit in the industry. But Ray Van Hilst is the Director of Client Results at Yoko Co., a web design and marketing agency focused on helping organizations increase their impact through the web. Ray blends 20 plus years of marketing experience with modern web principles to create high-value websites that help organizations meet their goals. His diverse background includes Fortune 500 brands such as Disney and Home Depot, and many nonprofits and associations. Ray works with clients to set the strategic direction for their website and online marketing by helping them get beyond the "wouldn't it be great if" conversations to the place of "this is what we should do" conversations. He offers clients strategic consultations on web development, content strategy, creative direction, and ongoing web operations. He's a frequent speaker. Again, if you're around the association world, you will constantly see Ray around doing presentations about web strategy, web operations, marketing technology, and he's also active as an ASAE member. When he's not thinking about the web, Ray's a really likable guy. He's a husband, father, outdoorsman, frustrated musician, and a struggling home brewer. So with that introduction, Ray, I'd like to turn the controls over to you.
Thank you so much, George.
I would like to also just lastly remind everyone that we will ask, this is going to be an interactive presentation. We're going to attempt to ask some polling questions throughout, and just feel free to just jump right in and answer those quick questions. Thank you.
Awesome.
Right.
And you're seeing my screen?
Yep, looks great.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for taking some time out of your day. Let's talk about one of my favorite subjects, and that's how to create a successful association website. We're going to talk about 5 key strategies for this today. So first of all, as Art said, the slides are being downloaded, so don't feel like you need to write everything down or available for download. Don't feel like you have to write everything down. I've got a lot of great information I'm going to go through. If you have any questions, please use the question feature, but also please feel free to reach out after the fact if you have any questions. I am pathologically helpful, and I'm here to help you succeed, and that's what I love to do and why I do this. So let's go ahead and start off with, why does this matter, and why do we care so much about making our websites better? Well, let's start off with a simple fact. More members and prospective members, new members, are going to come to your website and will interact with your website than do anything else. Think about that. More members are using your website than going to your annual meeting, than reading your journals or buying your things. It's the #1 entry point. And what the research shows us is that by improving how your website and how it works, just with some usability improvements, you can make it work up to 60% better. But more important for us as membership organizations, that key first impression is what says, hey, this is a place for you, or you can advance your career, or they can go elsewhere. But the reality is, people have a lot more places and ways to go and get information from. There's new competition out there. If any of you are with a medical association, you've probably heard of Doximity. It's a social network that was created for doctors. They were founded in 2011 to have more than 1 million members. By comparison, now AMA doesn't publish their membership, but they only have about 230,000 members. So stop and think about that. A for-profit social network has 4 times as many members as the major medical association that represents all of our doctors in the country. There's competition out there. This is where people are going. This is one of my favorite ones. My wife is a teacher. She teaches 2nd grade. They're really cute. They're wonderful at that age. She belongs to a website called Teachers Pay Teachers. Think of this as the teacher version of a resource library. Teachers upload resources and then a teacher can buy it. Like, oh man, I'm looking for a worksheet on how to add apples or something like that. She goes in, she downloads it. They have 4 million active members. Now, here's the crazy thing about that, because since she's a teacher, I fill out my taxes, I figure out how much she spent on as a teacher on supplies. She spends on average $300 a year on this website downloading resources. At the same time, she is not a member of the National Education Association. So she's going to a for-profit organization and place to get her information instead of going to a for-profit. And we see this all around. You've got TED Talks where people are sharing information. LinkedIn about lynda.com. If you have kids in high school, you've probably gotten frustrated in helping with homework and you went to Khan Academy. There's all this information that's out there. And we want to make sure that within that world of what we're competing against, that our associations, that are thought leaders, you are the industry experts for what you do. How do you stand out in that world? And how do we make it go? That's what we're going to talk about today. Okay? So, but before we jump in, this is the polling questions we were talking about. Let's go ahead and do a little polling questions. So we got a couple questions we're going to ask, and Art's going to throw us up. Starting off with, when was the last time you did a website redesign? Go ahead and pull that in, and let's go ahead and take a look. You know, maybe you're in the middle of one, maybe you've never done one, and you're kind of like, oh man, what's going on? This is an IT project. What does it take a look like? Or it's in the past 3 to 4 years.
And we'll give you just about another 30 seconds. You almost have everybody's vote in.
Woo, fast voters, I like that.
And Ray, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see the results, but if you can't, I will.
Okay.
I will read them off to you. So just a little bit longer here. Still people voting. Okay. All right, I'm going to close down the poll and I'll share the results with the audience. Ray, can you see that by chance?
Yes, I can. Awesome. Okay, so a third of you are in the middle of it. Looks like everyone else. And for the people that have never done one, you're scared and confused, don't worry, we're here to help, and feel free to ask questions. For those of you that have that are in the middle of one right now, I hope we give you some information. That's good to know. All right, for our next poll question, so what's the timing for updating your website? Well, we actually know from this last question that you're working on it now.
Okay, and you should be able to see the poll right now. Yep, and I see people responding. Yep. We'll give you about 30 seconds. All right. Still going. Got about close to 80% of the audience. Okay. Anyone in the next 5 seconds? Okay, well, let's close that poll down and see what we got here.
All right, half of you working on something now, the other third working with the next couple of years. 12% of you said just finished and you never want to do that again. I'm going to come back to that one. That's a really, and by the way, I'm going to validate that is a perfectly normal feeling. All right, and our last one is, what are you most concerned about with your website?
Okay, so put that up there. Can give you about 30 seconds. Okay. Got about 70% of the audience still going, and I'll give you about maybe 5 more seconds. Still going. Okay, let me close that poll down. Here you go.
Okay, content for about 20%. That's awesome. We're going to talk about that. Engagement and member value. I like that. 70%, that's a big one. Function, okay, perfect. Hey, this gives me some good information as I dive in. So perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And let's go ahead and jump into our start. So first, our first success key. I know we've been hearing this out there. We've been hearing content marketing, content marketing. Well, it is time for us associations out there to kick marketing content's ass. Warning, I sometimes have a potty mouth. Hopefully that's the worst I say. Anyway, think about content marketing. So we've been hearing out this and for-profits are doing this. I'll be honest, I work at a for-profit. This is content marketing right now. Thank you for attending this webinar. More and more marketers are doing. The survey said 89% of marketers are doing, of B2B marketers are doing content marketing. By the way, you know the other 10% are doing? They're currently looking for jobs because they're unemployed because they're not doing this. And we actually see, by the way, for-profits adding roles and specific people, hiring like journalists, people coming out of school. Can you create content? Can you write? They've got designers. They're putting this information out there. They're looking not just on their websites, but they're looking into other platforms as they can do this. Well, the beautiful thing about this is the fact that as an association, you're a content machine. Just think about all the things you create on a daily basis. You've got your industry news, your press releases, your articles, your journals, you do webinars and things like that. So the trick is, how do we leverage that and make that successful? Well, we want to start off with, just instead of just creating content for content needs sake, let's start by putting our member needs first, okay? And as we look at the website of how people navigate through the website, we want to make sure that we're thinking about that, we're tying that back to our content marketing. So say it with me. First of all, your organization chart is not your website's navigation. If we were live, I'd ask you now to raise your hand if your website looks like, oh, here's my meetings department, and here's my education department, and here's my membership department. If those are your key tabs and navigation items, you're failing your members. So we want to start by understanding what the members are doing and what they're looking for. If you haven't been through a persona exercise, this is a really good way to do this. Start by defining your users. Who are they and what are they come to the site to do? And a lot of times people say, oh, well, this is a student member or this is a senior member. And there's something to that, but you may also want to take a look at, where is this person in their career? What are they looking for? Why are they participating within the organization? Is this someone that just wants to get their continuing education and move on with their day? Is this someone that wants to make a difference in the world and volunteer? Is it someone that wants to be a leader? So you go ahead and document these. And the benefit of, once you've defined personas, is that basically you can take your own prejudices out of the process, okay? Because what we find when we're talking to people, if you say, how do you think people use the web? They typically answer with the way they personally use the web. So in this case, this is from a site I did a number of years ago for the American Society of Radiologic Technologists. They're the people that will give you an X-ray. They all have to be licensed in all states. They need a certain amount of continuing education. So we have our generalist, Jim, who's, he's just wants to get his work done. He wants to go home, all the way up to our evangelist, Bob. He's a board member. He's in a management role. Where do people fit within that? But now we can define that. And now that we know that who we're designing and building a site for, we can say, what is the site here to do? And one of the best tools you can do for this is what we call a website mission statement. And this is a website mission statement I did for AADE. I think I saw one of you all were registered for the site. This is when I worked on their site. And what's interesting about this is, when we defined the website mission statement for this site, we said it was for the diabetes educators. The important part is we think about what AADE provides, which is diabetes education that can be given, that providers can give to patients and work within. We didn't say we're competing with the American Diabetes Association, because they have a lot of patient information. So we specifically said, here's what it's here to do. And it's here to provide this information to help them do this, which in this case, help them with their day-to-day assistance in their jobs, make their life easier, and and then ultimately we wanted to build a collaboration and a content hub, back to our content marketing piece. This kind of gives us our North Star, if you will, as we think about what is the website here to do. When someone says, hey, I think we should do this on the website, you can point back and say, you know what, we said our members are this type of people and they're coming to this thing. This is what we're here to do. This helps you along with that. Now, for those of you that may want to create one of these, in the download, good news, we have the Mad Libs version of your website statement generator. You can use this and drop this in and create your own. Okay, so we started off now with knowing who our users are, knowing what we're trying to do with the website as we get that going. So let's go ahead and build that content strategy. And this is a quote from Monica Busolati, who does some content strategy work and content marketing work. And the reality is that we need to get the ship pointed in the right direction and make this all happen. So as we build our content strategy, what goes into that? And as you think about your website, there's a few key questions you want to ask. What to publish? Articles, webinars. Why publish it? Go back to that website mission statement. Why we're here to help people do this. How do you publish it? You put it on your website, you share it on your social network, you put it in there, and then how do you promote it? Because just because you publish it doesn't mean they're going to come. You want to keep getting that out there. By the way, as you take a look at your content, this also includes older content that might be like a year or two old. You can always dust that off and use that again, okay? But if you think about it in that content strategy, we want to have that Venn diagram, that overlap of what's there. So we started off with what the user needs. Here's who our members are. They're coming to the website for this. This is what they're looking for. If we meet only their needs, we will ignore our business drivers. We want membership and things like that. We overlay that. And then lastly, we overlay the technology, which is what makes it possible. A good tool as you go forward for that is to build a content strategy statement, similar off of that, as to what we talked about with the website mission statement. So what kind of content? What does the content do? How does it make people feel? And this is one that I did with the Sigma Theta Tau International, the Nursing Honor Society. And how does it then ultimately help the organization? Good news for you. Here's your Mad Libs generator as we do that. So we've defined that. This is what we're here to do. Let's get that going. So now we know what we're doing. We found all this information. We put that out there. The reality is we have to keep the beast fed. We have to get the stuff up on the website. So our next step that's really important is to make everyone a publisher. Let's enable everyone in the team to do this. I always say what you publish on a website should be the most difficult decision you make instead of how do I publish this? Then we can get some training. And one of the things, this is a great quote from one of my former clients that said, the simple interface allowed the subject matter experts to create content. And that's really important. As you think about your internal subject matter experts, let them create that and let them publish it as you put that out there. So you might be saying, well, how do I get more of my staff involved? Well, first things first, let's create ownership. I was working with one organization and they were like, we can't get our VPs to create content for the web. So I actually said to the COO, he was venting to me, I said, do you have it in their annual goals? We'll use the website to actively promote their programs. He goes, oh, that's brilliant. Let's create that ownership. Also empower people. If you have junior staff, they're like, man, I want a place where I can make a difference. Great, let's teach you how to publish content. Assign that responsibility. Listen, I'm gonna talk about a RACI chart. And then lastly, that train and support. Depending on the CMS you're using, my company uses WordPress a lot, 99% of our products on that. You can Google how to do anything in WordPress and get training, but we also provide detailed training so you support your teams. As you're looking at that getting staff involved, you may want to build a RACI matrix. This stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. It's a good management tool. So think about who's going to be doing what pieces. You probably don't want your CEO writing every single piece. They're probably a little bit busy, but you might have them write a couple pieces, but then be consulted on what's going on. And typically what's happening in the IT team is making sure the servers are running. They don't need to be involved with that. So you can kind of map that out and make sure that's working for you, okay? So just to recap on key number one, to beat the content marketers, we're gonna put our members' needs first. We're gonna create that content. We're gonna have a content strategy that makes the content the right priority. And we're gonna get everyone involved. So we're gonna spread that content marketing love around, okay? And let's get into our next key, which is having that mobile strategy, okay? And I think we all know this. We've been talking about mobile, we've been talking about responsive for quite a while. And in 2014, Comscore pointed out that the fact that there were more mobile users than there were desktop users. But here's the scary thing as we think about this. The next generation is what I call mobile natives. I'm of the generation where they were told, oh, you're digital natives. You've always grown up with devices. Well, we're seeing young people coming in and Gen Z as being mobile natives. Here's a case in point. By the way, this is not a stock photo. The rest of them have been. This is my kid actually doing their homework on their phone. My kid, I have two kids in high school. Typically, the first device they reach for when they're checking on their homework or getting their homework is their phone. And I see more and more people doing this. In fact, I actually, as a matter of practice, try to work one day a month just for my phone. I encourage every one of you to do it to understand what it's like to be a mobile first person, which some of your members may be. So you might be saying, okay, well, how do I put this together? Well, I call it the Tao of association mobile strategy. We have to think about that content, the right content in the right context of what's going on and what they needed. So think about this. You may have a nurse, and I've seen this in clinical in places where they're checking between patients. They don't have time to run back to the nurse's station. They're just going to reach into their purse, and they're going to pull something out, and they're going to look something up on their phone. A business executive or maybe an association manager, you're in between meetings. You've got your laptop or maybe just a tablet. You're taking some notes. You're on the go. You're not going back to your desk and do that. But overlay that, for example, a customer service rep or an accountant or something like that that's in a sit-down location in the call center. They're looking at their desktop and they're looking at a computer. So think about then, what kind of content is that person looking for in those resources? For our nurse, it might be about patient resources or practice guidelines or references and things like that. For the business executive, they're like, oh, I need to see some trends. I'm looking for some information, or I want some research. They're looking for that on the go. So make sure you're providing those in that mobile first experience. For our customer service rep, they're looking for that detailed experience of information. And it's okay to, and part of what goes along with this is also how much content do you put on the page to help them scan through that. On the desktop user, they're going to have plenty of time as they go through that. So as you think about your strategy, you may decide, okay, well, am I going to do responsive design? Am I going to do a mobile app? Am I going to do a whole mobile website? Some people still do that, but typically not. And think about, how do you build that plan? What we find most organizations do is, at a minimum, you go with a responsive design. If you're not familiar with that, that's basically the web browser responds to the size of the browser. So on a big screen, it goes out wide. On a small screen, it's narrow. Creates that mobile experience. And think about that. Or do you do an app for, like, I think most of you probably have event apps. They're good for specific content as you think about that. The one thing I'm going to ask you to think about, though, is no user ever said, oh, wow, I wish this organization had a responsive website. No, they just wanted to work on their phone, and they wanted to work easily. So keep in mind that, like, how we do this on the back end, that's a developer solution to a user need. They just want that to be better. So some cases to think about that. The two from our work that we've done with Innova, which is a large healthcare system here in the Northern Virginia area. They have a program called Life with Cancer. They provide consulting services for people that are in cancer treatments. Actually, the site is built on a responsive service because we know that a lot of the patients, they're pulling it up in the doctor's office to schedule classes and get help, but it's constantly being updated with new classes and new information. So it's an easier way to push that and manage it. But we have some navigations. You can see right here, the Start Here button on the left, quickly into that. A more specific one is actually an app that our company built called Blood Donor Mobile. Its idea is to help people find local blood drives. That kind of lives with you. It's time to one thing. We pull a database. That's a specific ask. So that's a good use to think about that in those user first case studies of mapping that out. So build that mobile first focus. When someone is coming to your website, and go back to those personas, where are they? Are they at work? Are they on the go? Are they in an office? What are they looking for? And then prioritize that content. So for maybe on your homepage, you have, if you know you have clinicians coming in looking for information, that's a key driver. Have a big, easy button that goes, need clinical resources, boom, go to that section, lead them in, and then prioritize that content, okay? So as we wrap this up, we want to think about that mobile strategy. The mobile strategy has to be part of your overall web strategy of how people are coming in, but balance that the right content in the right context. Remember, at the end of the day, users don't care what technology you're using. They just want it to work, okay? So our next one is the fact that this is one of my favorite things. The home page is dead, because every page is a home page. And I tell clients all the time, for those of you that are in the middle of your redesign, I almost wish I could do a poll on this, but silently raise your hands. How many of you had 25 meetings about the homepage and what was going to go on it, and it went through board review, and you had all this information and discussions ad nauseum, right? Well, remember, for all the discussion about the homepage, it actually should be one of your least viewed pages on your site. And think about it. A good homepage is here to make an introduction, and get you to a subpage quickly. And typically what will happen as you're doing your work right, you will actually see your homepage goes down as the key entry point to your site. This is analytics from one of the sites that I worked on, the American Association of Colleges of Osteopathic Medicine. So if you want to go to a medical school to study osteopathic medicine, this is where you would go. This is from Google Analytics, from the landing pages. How do people enter the site? You'll notice number 3 here, only 10% of the people entered the site to the home page. So the first page that people saw were not that. And what we actually see is with a number of our sites that, and we consider a success when the home page is one of the lower viewed landing pages, that's a success to us. Because if you think about it, many users are going to enter your site from something other than the home page. Search engine optimization is a key thing. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. I've done a Google search for something specific, I come in. Or email, you sent out an email to a link to a resource, they come in through that. Or social sharing. So how do we make every page work like the home page? Well, we're going to start off by building pages for the modern user and how people actually use the web. So the first thing is to understand that people don't simply read every single word on the page. We perseverate and fuss and agonize over every single word that's going to go there, but the reality is people don't read it. And what we know is they actually scan. The image on the right is from what's called a heat map study, and the red areas are where people spent more time in their focus. So you can see that they kind of scan through and scroll down the page. It looks like an F-shaped pattern, okay? One of my favorite designs I did, which actually illustrates this perfectly, back to using ACOM as an example, this looks like an F. We know that people landed with their eyes up in the top left-hand corner. They came down, they scrolled, oh, considering medical school, that was the second piece that had some other information, kept on scrolling down the left side of the page. So we put the order of the information in the priority of where the user's eye was going. So when you're laying out your pages, say, okay, user landed top left-hand corner, they're going to see my logo, they're going to jump about halfway down the page. What's the most important thing I want them to know? Is it register now, or limited seating, or advance your career? What is that most important thing you want them to know? And that's where you put that there. I talked about the fact that people don't read. They're scanning through that. So one of my favorite rules of usability for this is from a guy named Steve Krug, wrote a book called Don't Make Me Think. It, by the way, lives in my bag. I highly recommend it. But he says, get rid of half the words on each page and then get rid of half of what's left. We've seen this before. We get all these things. And the reality is because people aren't reading, every additional word creates cognitive dissonance for them and it makes them think that much more. So let's make this easy. So as you think about that, what are some ways we can do that? For me, I am a really harsh editor on myself. One of the first things I do is I go through and I look for excess words when I'm writing things. Look for other words that you can take out. You know, happy talk. And I'm like, oh, we're so excited to have you here. It's like, nope, let's just jump straight into it sometimes. Instructions, or I mentioned unnecessary adjectives, and then breaking up those paragraphs. Here's a great example. You've probably seen this copy before. You're sending out a questionnaire. Oh, we're going to ask you for all this information. It's going to make the site more relevant, and we have all this information. I mean, stop me if I'm wrong. Is there anyone in the working world that has not taken an online survey at this point? We kind of know how to do that. We've all been doing that. So why are we over analyzing and sharing more information? We're also having here like a whole bunch of asks. You know, we're saying, hey, you take time out of your schedule to do this, and let's keep asking more information. We could just tighten it straight up like this. Boom. Help us answer these questions. And if you have anything more, send to customer service. Now you might be saying to yourself, Ray, come on. I have this awesome content that I need people to know and that they need them to go through. You might be saying, well, how much content is right? Well, think about it of how people navigate through the site. You start at the home page, you see a headline, you go to the next page, you see a little summary, you're going through and you navigate through. There's actually a usability term called a scent trail. If you have a dog, if you've ever been out walking your dog and you watch your dog catch a scent, you see them going through this. The same thing happens to people as they're using the web. They navigate through following the information of where they think they're leading them. And what's really interesting about this is once people get down to this detailed content and they're ready to consume, they come out of search mode and they come into consume mode. And I've seen this firsthand when I'm doing usability tests. You watch the user, the person, they're leaning into their computers, they're clicking. When they find the information they're looking for, They literally lean back in their seat, and now they start to consume. So help them navigate through that until they get there. Now, your deep pages, like your search engine, your SEO optimized pages, or something deep that you're sending, go ahead and have that, 1,000, 2,000 words. But the pages of how you're getting to there might be shorter, or maybe you have a summary article or something like that. Link through that. I mentioned the fact that people don't read, and the reality is the fact that studies show that at best, people read about 20% of the words. So think about how do you write these pages for scanning, okay, because that's where people are going. Think about subheads, breaking things up. Pro tip for you, if you format your content in Word or Google Docs using the heading 1, heading 2, most content management systems, when you import it in, it's going to format it just like that. Break up your content with bullets and lists, okay? Use that formatting. One of my best examples I found about this, I'm going to talk about white space strategic images. I should have done another poll here. This would be perfect. I could ask if anyone recognizes this. So, Arj, since you're on the phone, I'm going to see if you, I'm going to call you out. Do you recognize this piece of literature? Whenever I find myself going grim about the mouse? No?
No.
What if I told you the first line was, call me Ishmael?
It sounds familiar.
Okay, so Melville wrote this great book called Moby Dick. Like Moby Dick, exactly. We all read it.
Thank you, Kelly.
Awesome. Awesome book, but it's really, his words were so long. Well, if we're going to write this in the modern world now, we would just break it down to something like this. I must go to sea when I'm depressed or melancholy. We have a bullet list. We break some things out. Full disclosure, I have the link down here. I'm not smart enough to come up with this. I actually found this at ClickZ, great website. But you can actually see the difference between something that, quite frankly, think about your content or a piece of something that someone gave you. This gets glanced over. I'm not going to read it. This gets scanned and I take a look at it. Okay? So it's a good way to break up that content as you think about that. I mentioned pictures briefly, and this is where we see this more and more, that pictures matter. And we really see this in the social media and social web, of where pictures are driving that engagement, pulling things back. And we know, by the way, that content with photos gets about 94% more views and is more likely to be shared. So go ahead and grab those photos and think about ways that you can use them. An easy one, this is a site that we did for the Animal Welfare League of Arlington, one of our favorite clients. We got staff photos of everyone with their pets and showing that, so on your pages, bring in those staff photos, create that connection, create your member photos and things like that. Use the photos also to tell a story. One of our clients is the Coalition to Transform Advanced Care. So dealing with like the issues around advanced care, how do we get those images in there? Be strategic about how you find them, use them to tell that story and put that together. Great opportunities when you go out to meetings, make sure you're hiring photographers, get those photos when you're doing your Capitol Hill visits, the grip and grins and stuff like that. Even including like a photo, if you have a guest post by a member, include their member photo and think about that. If you really want to up your game, take a look at using video for better engagement. And studies are showing that people stay on those web pages a lot longer, then take a look at that. And something that I see organizations doing, which I kind of disagree with, is they're like, oh, we have a content type of articles and publications and video. I would actually recommend put the video next to the written content and help out with that, because it's just another way to consume that content. And what we actually see in our research is that it can increase those conversion rates by 80%. So some ways to do that. Blog posts and articles are an awesome way to put that together. Using webinars, like this is going to be recorded and put that out there. I'm going to mention blog posts and articles. So here's a good example. This is I grabbed this image from our website. This is an article that we wrote about how often should you redesign your association website. You can see there's a video up at the top. A little trick for you, what we do is we actually sit down, we have this program we do with our clients. We'll map out like 20, 30, 50 topics that could be articles or blog posts. Set up a camera one day, we rotate the client through, we can record all of them, 40, 50, whatever. All that content is now in the can. We can go away, we can transcribe it, turn that into an article and put that out. So a tip for you if you want to do the same thing, you want to have member created articles for your newsletters, at your annual meeting, recruit people to come in and say, hey, can you talk for about 2 minutes about something, about a topic? Boom, you have that information, you can put that in there, create that content. We've also found out, by the way, that having the video on the page increases engagement instead of separating it from the article. So that's a good way to do that. Likewise, your chairman's message or members' messages from your leadership, a quick video thing. And some of these are produced, but some of them don't have to be. They're great tools for capturing screen video. One of my favorites is a tool called Loom, L-O-O-M. Great one. You can just do a screencast with that and capture information as you put that. Embed that in your website. And lastly, we're seeing this more and more, and it's a real engaging tool, is to use video in the homepage of the website. Because this webinar, I don't have it pulled up, but if you go to amazonteam.org, one of our clients, the Amazon Conservation Fund, they've got this awesome drone footage they shot of the Amazon and the areas they work in. Great way to create engagement and just really create some energy around that. But that's embracing that video as we take a look at that. Okay. Thinking about search engine optimization, though, I said, every page needs to be optimized. Let's go for that. So we think about how do we put this content into the site? How do we get it in there? So the first thing to think about is creating those destination pages. So we want to create then I could do a whole other webinar on this. So if you want to talk offline about it, let me know. But we create what we call pillar and cluster pages. So basically your pillar page is the core topic page about something. And then your cluster pages are other areas around this. So a good example of this is one of our clients that's the American Association of Endodontists with a great patient area. One of their main pages is what is a root canal? If you've had a root canal, you've met their members. But we have a whole other series of pages that are about other areas related to a root canal that then link over to it. What this does is it basically makes sure that we are passing what we would call that SEO juice to this core page, and we're pushing it up in the search engine rankings, and we're helping along with that. We're actually doing some work with AAE right now on SEO to help them rank better for specific terms. We found that WebMD and Mayo Clinic were outranking them. We were like, I don't like that, so we've been doing some work. We've actually increased their search traffic by about 30% since we started the engagement with them. So it's one of the things to think about. But when you're looking at the page, one of the things you may say is, well, how do I do SEO on this page? Well, if you know what your keywords are, and this starts with doing some keyword research and maybe knowing what that is, you want to make sure that you're actually using those words in the content. All right. So I always say, don't jargon drop. If there's key phrases and words that you're using or acronyms, they speak to specific people, you may want to spell that out. The other thing to think about is if you optimize a page that is behind a member login, Google can't see it. Once Google hits the member login, they're out, they're going away, they're not coming back. So make sure if you have a piece of protected content, write a publicly available piece of content about it, or there's some other ways I can show you where we actually preview that text to help with search engine optimization. And then have that metadata. Make sure you just put it in your title tag. A good plugin, if you're using WordPress, is called Yoast SEO. And it actually, once you tell it what key phrase you're working for, talking about, so this is a site for one of our for-profit clients. They're writing an article about teaching kids about money. You can see that down the bottom. It says focus keyword. It helped us and we got to green. Good, we're well optimized. This tells us, okay, you've got good content. You're gonna rank for this page. All right. So you might be saying, well, how do I find these content keywords? Start with your Google Analytics. Take a look at what pages people are coming in on. If you have Google Search Console installed, you should. Take a look at subject-specific searches they're doing. Pro tip for you is to look at key phrases and landing pages or maybe on page 2 or 3 of Google, and how can you tweak them to move them up to page 1. And then there's some research tools you can use, Google Keyword Tool. There's some other paid tools you can find. And lastly, let's talk about page speed. I was mentioning mobile first. Page speed really matters. Google wants your site to load quickly. They would prefer that your pages all load within 3 seconds. It's pretty aggressive. We try to target within 6 pages. If we see pages slower than that, we start looking at how can we optimize them, how can we increase server performance. But the reality is, if you have 2 equal pages, the slower page is going to be lower in Google search engine rankings, search engine results than the higher. And you can actually see this is a page before optimization of pages that we said, oh, we need to target these and improve these. The ones that are red are the ones we took a look at. And then these are some of the times that we had within that. So making every page a home page, this is really key. Thinking about the modern user, having that scanning, the layouts written for scanning the short copy and making everything for SEO. So we've gotten the user there. What's our next step then? Well, let's make sure we keep feeding that funnel. This is our 4th success key as we think about this. There's more to what you do than just dues. You've got publications, you've got events, and other groups are doing that. And we see, by the way, for-profit groups have events. So this is what I'm going to challenge you to do, is to think about engaging and converting at every single level. Every time someone comes into the website, we want them to do something. I always say to my clients, find my resources or read my articles is not necessarily an action. It's helpful. It helps them. But now we want them to do something. What is that next step? Get them into that next piece of content. Increase that time on site. You can do that simply in the text by having some articles and links out. For more information, click this, download the career path, share this on Facebook, join us on LinkedIn, sign up for action alerts. That's that next step, so that every single piece of content has an ask. And you can do that by just basically mapping out the flow. Someone comes in from here, where do they go? What's the next piece? And how can you use your content management system at that point also to increase that engagement and get that information out there? So one of the tools that we use is actually what we call the conversation spectrum. And this is really helpful as you think about different pieces of content. So I'm going to use the root canal example because it was one that with AAE we worked on their patient site, but you can do the same thing. So the oblivious level is like, I don't even know what this is. I'm having an issue. I don't even know how to solve it. The curious is like, oh, here's a technique of how I could do this. Intrigued is, maybe I should be looking into this more. Invested is, I'm ready to do this. So in the case of a root canal, it might be this, but it might be, for example, I've been using AADE a good bit. How do I become a diabetes educator? Or what are my career options? What does a diabetes educator do? What training do I need? Now I'm down in the intrigued. What's their career look like? And then ultimately, as you're guiding them through that, you say, oh, how can AAD help me be a better diabetes educator? So thinking through that, you're leading to that conversion. Each piece of content leads to the next one. In college, we thought about this as like 101, 201, 301 type content. We're doing the same thing here as we map that out. So thinking about feeding that funnel, we want to remember membership is not our only goal. As we guide people through that content, we make their lives a little easier. We increase that member engagement. We increase our member value. We're going to use those calls to action. We're going to make the ask, and we're going to manage that conversation. Okay. And lastly, we want to think about this, and if we're going to talk about websites, we have to call out the elephant in the room. We want to think about that Marcom technology roadmap, okay? I'm going to scare you real quick with this next slide. Ready? This is, and actually this is an old slide, this is all the marketing technology out there. Whew. I'll tell you, by the way, I've served on the Technology Council for ASAE. I'm currently on the Marketing Council for ASAE. And marketing technology is one of our biggest discussions that we talk about. I just came back from MMC. It was a key driver. And in 2014, Harvard Business Review said that quickly that CMOs are going to be spending more on technology than the CIO. And for those of you that are marketers, you probably know that already just looking at what's going on. And the technology spend is just growing. Gartner's report found that 22% of marketers are spending the money just on the technology. So what needs to happen for that? Do we all need to go back to computer school and do that? No, we actually think about a hybrid role. So we think about it being a marketing technologist. We look at the things that are driving this, the analytics that drive the action, the automation that's making things better. We're looking at optimization. We're putting all that together. And we're just kind of changing our brains to think about what's that next step and what tools am I using to drive that and how am I picking technology. But the other thing we want to realize is the fact that technology changes very quickly. Scott Brinker writes a blog called the Chief Martech blog, one of my favorite blogs, and he just points out the fact that technology is going to change faster than we can respond. And I'm going to pause because I want you to think about that, because you probably just had an existential crisis and said, holy cow, he just said, I can't keep up. And you're right, you can't. And I want to validate that that's okay. Stick to what you understand of how you know, and adopt the technology that works for your organization as you do that. And how you do that, as you think about this, is becoming that marketing technologist. You think about, okay, what sorts of IT questions do I need to ask? I need to ask about uptime, security. Okay, IT team, what are the things I should be worried about? But more important as marketers, we want to think about what are those marketing practices? How do they help us convert? How do they help us measure and track? And there's a little bit of left brain, right brain that's going on. But the way that you keep that going is to just manage that change and stay flexible. Keep asking yourself, how does this help the customer and how does this help the member? So when a shiny new object comes along, I'll be honest, one I've been looking at right now is artificial intelligence. I've been doing some work within that. I haven't really adopted a lot because I can't see the point where it's solving a member or a customer need. Is it making things better? The other piece is making sure that you have that agile approach. We're living more and more in a world where you can swap out your tech for one system for another. So when something new comes along, you can do that. So think about those phases and being willing to experiment, adopt something new and try that out. So typically what will happen is people come to us in the middle of they're like, my AMS is old, my CMS is old. I was actually talking with Arch about this yesterday. I always say, please start with your AMS and then come talk to me for your website. But you may want to take a look and say, okay, how do I grow into this? What are my phases of how am I going to get there? So build that roadmap. And I think it's really important to think about the fact that you need to grow into your technology, particularly if you're making a big jump in what you have. This is a quote I found from a user experience person, just said, you know, people don't have the capability to dive into every tool. Just because your technology can do everything doesn't mean you're actually going to do it. So as you think about that, think about your team that you have ready. You know, so I use the example, don't go out and buy a Maserati if everyone can only drive a Toyota, okay? And that's okay. Think about that. Think about your data that you have. And as I just indicated, have that solid CRM and AMS infrastructure for your core data. I realize that sounds weird for the web guy to be saying that, but that's really the core of it. Once you figure out how that goes together, you can then say, okay, where do we need to go? I did some great work with PCMA a few years ago, and Jason was pointing out the fact that they needed a CMS that allowed them to change without having to reinvent the wheel every time. So what they were looking for when we implemented the tool for them was say, okay, how can we add features in? We don't need everything at the right time at start. Can we start with something we go in? So think about that scaling of your technology to put that together. I was actually having this discussion with someone earlier this week. Being prepared for what's next is really key, and I think AI is going to be changing a lot of how we're going to be doing things. It's not going to replace our jobs, it's just going to change how we're doing it. Voice content and context. How many of you have one of these big listening devices in your home? So we know that people are doing more searches. I mentioned the point though that, and for those of you that said, I'm going to harken back to our quiz of the people that said they just finished a redesign and never want to do it over. This is where we get into that process though, as we think about our technology and what's happening and growing into our tech, of what we call growth-driven design. Now pause here to just, let's think about the way we go through website redesigns. Typically what happens, we do this big project, we let it sit for a few years, we get frustrated, the board complains, we do the project again, right? We blow it all up, we start again. And we go through that process and pretty soon we're all stressed out. But instead, one of the things that you can do is approach this growth-driven design mindset, both with your technology, your content, and your enhancements, of just making progressive enhancements. Okay, here's my new KPI, here's my new goal for my board. What do I want to do? How do I measure against that? Maybe I do a test, I do an improvement, I test that, and I repeat. What you will find over time, by the way, is that through each phase, these phases, you will end up basically redoing your site, but you're going to do it in a measured pace where it becomes part of your everyday role, and you will stay on track with the technology and the content and everything, rather than having a big burn it down and start all over scenario every few years. And particularly then going with the MarTech roadmap, it helps you build on that as you go through there. So to recap, is thinking about building that Marcom technology roadmap. We want to think about the role in how you're doing marketing now. Think like a technologist and embrace that. Select that technology you can grow into. You know, you don't need the overpowered system necessarily right away, or think like, okay, I can use this in a few years, I can do that. Have a roadmap. Don't try to do everything at once. I'm going to use the example of someone comes to me with doing an AMS and a CMS implementation at the same time. I always joke with them and say, how's your drinking problem? Because it's going to get worse. Do the AMS first, come back and do the roadmap, then add in your LMS, have those things so you can do that. And then once you have those core pieces in place, we can talk about making progressive changes and keep going and making that commitment and keeping you on that path to success. So speaking of success, I'm going to wrap up. These are our 5 keys to association website success. We're going to start off with content marketing. We're going to kick the for-profit people's ass. We're going to do it better than, because you have better content that's more valuable, that's more recognized, and you're just going to get it out there and you're going to make it found. I'm going to have that mobile strategy that's going to help people find you in the right place at the right time when they're making those decisions that they're going. You're making every page work just as hard as your home page. You're analyzing your deeper pages saying, hey, if this was the first page I saw on landing on the site, would I look at it? Would I become a member, or would I bolt out of here? Think about writing for search engine optimization and scanning of how people take a look at that. And then we're going to make that ask. We're going to say, okay, we're going to get our members, but we're also going to keep feeding that funnel with our other things we do. We're going to say, hey, would you like to buy this product, or could you join, or here's another article that's more relevant for you. And then we're going to think about our underlying infrastructure with that Marcom technology. We're going to have that roadmap that says, hey, here's where we can scale and we can grow and we can build information in. And that's how we're going to be successful. And we're going to have awesome projects in 2019 and in 2029. Whew. I was talking fast because I recognized where we were going and I wanted to stay on track for you. So
no, that was great. Really great. Great presentation, Ray. Ray, I'm going to just shoot you some questions if that's okay.
Yeah, fire away.
All right. So in regards to photos, do stock photos work to engage individuals in content as well as photos taken by a professional photographer or by staff?
Professional photographers and staff photos will almost always beat out stock photos. And you also run the risk of not having the same photo used twice. I used to collect a folder, used to have a folder on my computer of silver-haired businessman that was a member of approximately 20 associations because I found them all over the place. That's the danger you run into. That being said, if you're going to use stock photos, there are some really cool tools that you can use. Canva is one of my favorites. Tweak it just a little bit. Make it yours, crop in, make it unique, but also make sure that it ties into the content.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ray. And thanks, Michelle, for that question. Hey, I just also want to remind everyone that we will be sending a link following the webinar. It is being recorded today, so you'll get a link so that you can actually watch it offline or even share it with others that may have missed today's webinar. Next question is, this one's a little bit long, but I think it's a good one. So our organization is a regulatory association. While our primary members are licensing boards, we have other members such as CE provider, those who need to take the licensing exam, universities seeking accreditation. Since our member personas are so, emphasizing so, different, where do you even begin? By the way, right now it is set up to handle our different types of services offered, I guess, as opposed to those personas. Did you get some of that?
So, yeah. So what I've done with clients who say that, and this is a classic of like what our members and our key audiences are organizations or businesses. I always point out the fact that individuals still belong to those and still make the decisions. So as you take a look at that within, like, for example, a university body, who's the key person that's coming to that? What are their pain points? What's their look like? And then creating content to do that. I would recommend start off with 2 to 3 to 4 personas to start broad, and add and update your content as you go from there. And then as you master that, then you can start building and defining other personas and answering information around that.
I'm going to just take one more question. I know we're a little bit over, but we got a lot of them, so I would like to ask, because this is a question of mine too. How often should I redesign my website or do an overhaul like you've described?
So we find in the for-profit world, that is about every 2.5 to 3 years, 2 to 3 years. In the association nonprofit world, it's about every 4 to 6 years. What I think is key, what I think is key, and I'm still surprised of clients that have like on designs that are 10, 12 years old. What I think is key is to find a content management system that is going to allow you to constantly be updating and have the same infrastructure. And then that goes back to that point of growth-driven design, that once you're in that new infrastructure, you can periodically be tweaking and changing. And like, for example, taking a look at your member needs and updating, for example, the homepage once a year, you know, or maybe some layouts and putting information in like that. So that's kind of a, it depends type scenario, but you know, I hope that kind of answers it. If anyone wants to discuss that specifically, feel free to reach out and I can guide in your specific situation.
No question. It's one of the top integrations that we have as an AMS vendor. Websites tend to churn, just like you said, 2 to 3 years, at least for a redesign. So very, very common. Hey, our time is up and we really appreciate all your time. For those of you who are not seeking the CA, please, thank you very much for joining us today. I urge you again to download all the materials that you can from the GoToMeeting console here in the handout section. Just want a quick plug for those also who have enjoyed these webinars. We've had some really great turnout. Just know that we have a whole fall schedule coming, but there is one more that we will do this summer, and then we're going to take a little bit of a break. 15 key rules for managing your organization's data. I would like to thank Ray as well for joining us today and participating. It's always a pleasure to have you present.